And now, the conclusion of The Awakening of Joel Singer. Part 13. Sisyphus Smiles. Ron looked at the recent money transfer from Myanmar. He was singularly underwhelmed. He picked up his phone. Demetrius, after your appointment, let's see if we can find ourselves a charismatic rebel leader in Myanmar. Keep him safe, for now. Let's see which side inspires bigger checks. In the meantime, I'll remind the regime over there it's time to start cutting down more teak trees, Ron said, referring to the valuable but endangered trees that produce luxurious wood. Their lumber was technically illegal to export, but nevertheless used to fill the coffers of the military junta. His expected visitor was here, and he buzzed in the new director of special markets. "You look like you're in a hurry," Francesca said as she entered. "I'm on my way to a meeting." "You called me in for a meeting to tell me you're on your way to another meeting?" "I called you in to let you know you're heading to a meeting tomorrow yourself." "A meeting with whom?" "Demetrius and Greg," Ron explained the details.
"Why am I needed there?"
"To make sure the meeting is just like this one. Short." Ron pulled a dart gun from his desk drawer and slid it over to Francesca in a distracted manner. He briefly explained the revised poison and how they were back to guns as the pens had lost their element of surprise. "If you come upon them and they're getting along famously, keep walking. But I'm not counting on that."
"Greg is going to be pretty good at avoiding these darts."
"Not while he's struggling with Demetrius, he won't. Likely, he'll have killed Greg before you get there. You're just a backup plan."
"We're going to kill Greg?"
"It needs to be done."
"What if I hit Demetrius accidentally?"
Francesca asked. "The poison has been tweaked, not to work on those working with us, but make sure not to hit him anyway."
"You'd like me to stick with murdering Greg?"
Ron smirked. "Thousands have already been murdered by us to see our goals through. It could all be for nothing if Greg lives past tomorrow."
"There are a lot of other people you could get for this. One of the CVs, or one of those common street thugs you work with, for example."
"You can fly under the radar better than they can, and you're practiced at killing." Francesca turned red.
"My father deserved it. You know that."
"And Greg doesn't? He continues to support Bob's vision and the dystopia he would bring about, one that could kill millions more. No, Greg deserves to die. He just doesn't realize it. I need him gone. He's the only CV that could keep the rest from joining our side."
"God, I hate you,"
Francesca said as she was leaving, more to herself than Ron. "No, you don't," Ron replied nevertheless. "You hate that you're just like me, and everyone else is too at the end of the day."
"How does it feel to have completely given up on people?"
she said as she briefly turned back. Ron paused for just a moment. "Liberating," he said, as he threw on his suit jacket to leave. The chartered flight arrived in Mexico, uncharacteristically unperturbed by security on either side. A group of 4 raisons met him, former Mexican soldiers who had received elite special forces training by the United States, only to be hired by Mexican cartels for a hell of a lot more money. They were short, portly, and deadly. They were also inconspicuous in a way CVs could never have been. Hustling into a Hummer, they headed for Cancun, normally a sanctuary from drug violence, all the more so for the bounty of customers there. Ron could smell the ocean and see the high-rise hotels on the island section of the city, just as they turned off and headed into the jungle. After a jarring, jostling ride on a 4-foot-wide road with a 6-foot-wide truck, punctuated by tropical branches slapping against the windows, they came to a clearing. It was anchored by an imposing dark green stucco villa, replete with 20-foot-high concrete walls topped with barbed wire. Ron immediately recognized the typical dwelling of a Mexican drug lord. Led in by a wary guard, he was led over the green and white checkered marble floor of the foyer into the opulent dining room, where his cohorts were already seated, facing the entrance. George Burnson, the InnoGem CEO, Bruce Titus, the husky head of the Knights gang, and Javier Jordan, the governor of Chihuahua, which contained Juarez. General Mezclam, along with other friends in Washington, Bolivia, and elsewhere, were there in spirit and on encrypted video conference. George addressed him before he was even seated. "Ron, it's great to see you. Ron handed an envelope to his fellow CEO. "I need some solutions to these technical issues if we're going to kill Bob. Memorize the information, then burn the envelope." "You mean Joel?" the governor interjected. "Maybe Joel survived. Maybe Bob took his place in disguise. The second scenario would be my bet. He had the advantage over Joel, not with what he can do, but what he's willing to do. The same advantage I have over both of them. Still, we must prepare for either one. Bob has become so powerful, I think we'll have to kill him the same way we did Joel. It's possible our revised poison would work, but I can't be sure. And we have to avoid the mistake we made before." "What mistake?" the Bolivian dictator asked. "No warning this time. The last explosion was more than enough to kill Joel. I've been able to confirm that with my nerds. But trying to overwhelm our old friends instead of just vaporizing them allowed one of them to survive." The InnoGem's CEO looked to his other cohorts, then Ron incredulously. "But Ron, there was a reason we used the overload strategy. If we just released an equivalent explosion without any absorption, it would be big enough to destroy a quarter of the country, kill millions, maybe tens of millions of people." "Yes, there is that, but we'll be able to keep it to a minimum. Fortunately, Bob put his training camp in one of the most remote places in the world, a camp that the government would plausibly want Joel to travel back to with them as part of any agreement. We're just going to speed that process up a bit. The only other option is causing another meltdown in North Korea to get him over there, but I don't want to go back to that well." "You're talking about an explosion of 1,000,000 square miles. It will destroy all of Alaska, and more," Bernson said. "Yes, everyone in Alaska will die. Vancouver will be a goner as well. Too bad. I've got some nice real estate up there. The rest of British Columbia will be vaporized too. Same with the Yukon and the various rednecks, trailer trash, sinking into the tundra and drunken Eskimos living there. It'll kill about 6 million or so. Less than 6 weeks' worth of world population growth. Seattle should be okay, thankfully. Its destruction would cost us a lot of money. Almost certainly start a depression." "What if Dr. Harrington decides to skip this little surprise party and travels to his old office, or here, for that matter?" Bernson asked. Ron explained the new trackers and other steps he had taken to stop Joel or Dr. Harrington from using enhanced speed or superhuman abilities from a distance. "Would the bomb on the drone kill more or fewer than in Alaska?" the governor asked. "I think it's a moot question," Ron replied. If he was going to make his move before going there, he would have by now. "Fine," General Mezclan said. "Just get him dead and keep me in power." "In time," Ron replied, raising his hand. "And keep in mind, you won't be able to afford me on your own, my friend. You're going to need outside help for your check to clear. I don't care from where. But General Marquez is out of the way, and your other problems soon will be." "So, you did kill General Marquez then?" Dr. Bernson asked. There was a pause. "You feel free to keep asking questions," Ron replied with a smile. "Oh, speaking of dead people, this jungle looks pretty good for a final resting place for a couple of bodies. CVs that didn't make it out of Washington?" All three men seemed struck by the news. "So, they're not invincible after all," Bernson said, "even if you don't have your poison." "A couple of flukes," Ron said. "Dr. Harrington might have heard about it if he wasn't holed up in a basement at the time. 2 platoons had their fire on the same small group of CVs at the beginning of the battle. A mistake. They let the group next to them advance double time, but 2 kids took over 300 armor-piercing slugs in about 30 seconds. Hopefully they weren't 2 of your mercenaries," Javier said. Ron scowled. "Careful. I'll refer to the CVs how I please. I've given you no such license." "Speaking of questions," the InnoGem CEO said, "you've been asking fewer and fewer of them with me lately. None with this Alaska project. I'm starting to feel a little unneeded." No, George. I just hate to trouble you. I save you for the really tough problems." "You know, if I didn't know any better, I might think you've sucked all the intellectual property out of InnoGem you could, and used it to put your own team together. Paranoia doesn't look good on you, George." "Better than an orange jumpsuit is going to look on you," Bernson replied threateningly. Ron didn't have to wait long to see what he meant. Looking up and out the window, he saw 2 armored cars come through a suddenly open gate. Over 20 men in flak jackets poured from the vehicles with submachine guns. "Bad news, Ron," Burnson said. "We got invited to join a new team of our own. An invite we didn't have much choice but to take. One of the conditions was you weren't going to be part of the team." "I've got some bad news too," Ron replied, calmly, despite the sound of a battering ram smashing in the door. "My protective device has an offensive mode." With that, Ron pressed a button on his watch. Nothing happened. Metal framing clanged and shattered. Glass pinged as Ron sat impotently. A call came into George, which he answered despite the chaos. Over the din, Ron heard the voice on the other side shout, "Joel, George Burnson has gone into cardiac arrest here in the car. Is there anything you can do?" "I'm sorry, officer." The man Ron thought was the InnoGem CEO replied. "I can tell from here he's already dead." Ron's composure was finally broken as Burnson stood up simultaneously with the Mexican governor and the Knight's leader. He now saw the fleshy bands connecting the 3 of them. They merged into one, differentiating into a pale, fleshy, glowing mass, which transformed moments later into the visage of Joel in a tailored gray suit. Ron looked down to see the DNA tracker he had temporarily silenced was going off, a genetic change having occurred just minutes before his arrival. "Hello, Ron," Dr. Harrington said. "Hello, Bob," Ron replied despite what he saw. "I was wondering if you could test something for me." With that, he pulled the dart gun from his pocket and aimed it at Dr. Harrington under the table. The gun was snatched adroitly and smoothly out of his hand. Ron turned to see Chief Juanita Malone holding his gun. Behind her stood more than 30 heavily armed soldiers, Mexican and American alike, who apparently had stayed back at Chief Malone's request. His 4 discriminating raisons lay handcuffed on the ground, vanquished but alive. "Sorry to see you, Juanita," Ron said to the NYC police commissioner. "You should have taken the money and kept your mouth shut, like you did before. Now, you're going to die poor, disgraced, and soon, unless you make the right choice." "And what would that be?" "Take that gun, and let's see if it will kill Bob over there." "Looks like Joel to me." "Don't be fooled. That is Dr. Robert Harrington. I can tell. I don't care what fakery he's trying to pull. You can't possibly let him remain the most powerful man in the world. A superhuman I sent into a murderous rage at the sight of one torn blouse." "It is me, Chief Malone," Dr. Harrington said, morphing into his normal self. He did not make a move to snatch the gun. Malone did not look surprised. "So, you'd have the world run by a bunch of corrupt psychopaths?" she said to Ron. "The world is always going to be run by a bunch of corrupt psychopaths," Ron shouted. "That's who rises to the top. The only thing that changes is how many people get killed by dreamers like him, thinking it will be any different. You kill the authoritarian czar, the totalitarian commies come in. You get rid of Saddam Hussein, you get Al-Qaeda in Iraq and ISIS. You throw off King George III and 1,000 Tammany Halls bloom. All self-serving, all looking to enrich themselves and squash anyone in their way. But those corrupt psychopaths are predictable. They're looking to keep the train on the tracks like only I can. Those same old malfeasant tracks, and the world will be better for it. Now, pull that trigger." Juanita looked over at Dr. Harrington, who still made no move to stop her. The tension in the room was palpable. "I think I'll aim higher," Juanita finally said as she placed the dart gun into an evidence bag. "In the meantime, there is someone else who wanted to say hi." With that, a cop brought over an iPad. A moment later, General Marquez appeared on screen, looking like she was in recovery but all too alive. Ron groaned. Now he was going to have to hear preaching from 2 people who were supposed to be dead. "So, you survived," Ron said. "Yes, your poison was well designed but not unexpected. We have a lot of experience with the dark side of chemistry in Bolivia." And I can guess who helped you with an antidote. Hector would have been safer in the cocaine trade than helping you, I'm afraid." Marquez gave a stern look. "You're going to jail, Ron, where Hector will be safe from you. But you're not safe anywhere from me. Remember that, before you make another threat." "We'll see," Ron replied. "You know, It was me who got the CVs to go to Bolivia in the first place. You're welcome. I would have been happy to have taken your checks, preferred them, actually. But you had to go snooping around instead. So, really, any bad stuff that happened with Mezclan is really... Oof! Chief Malone interrupted Ron's speech by dumping him none too gently on the mahogany table to be handcuffed. He turned angrily to Dr. Harrington, even as he was being led away. You should have died like a man in Nevada, Bob, but I'll figure out how you got past me and kill you. Now millions more are going to have to die, and it's all your fault, he shouted. This is all your fault. I want the bodies of those CVs recovered, Dr. Harrington said to Chief Malone. Then he walked to the door, unbound but warily watched. He changed back into the visage of Joel as he did so, sending out a pulse that interfered with the short-term memory of everyone in the room but Ron and Chief Malone. Thank you, Juanita, he said to the police chief. Thanks for the warning to travel via conventional means and not go to Alaska. And thanks for tracking Ron this whole time. I'd be dead right now without you. Chief Malone nodded. My team is old, fat, grouchy, and damn hard to spot. You're welcome. Demetrius and Greg met up in Times Square on a Saturday afternoon, anonymous amongst the throng of tourists and hustlers. Glad to hear they let you go, Demetrius said to Greg. I'm still on the run, myself. Joel, we'll work out a deal for all of us. We're too important to be locked up. Dr. Harrington had actually confided to Greg that he was alive, but Greg had sworn to secrecy, and the sudden request for a covert meeting did not have him feeling forthcoming. I'm not planning on waiting for the man who was attacking me a week ago to set me free, Demetrius said. And if he is suddenly back to doing what Dr. Harrington would have wanted, that's even worse. It's time for you to join me in working with Ron. How do you figure that? Demetrius led Greg to a less crowded but still discreetly loud street. This is why I wanted to meet with you. I think it's time for us to stop being anyone's charge, especially the accomplice of the man who betrayed us. Dr. Harrington betrayed us. How do you figure? Demetrius played Ron's recording of Dr. Harrington's refusal to destroy the poison Gnotech had created, and told of the subsequent acknowledgement by Ron of Dr. Harrington's murder of the CVs, with the help of Joel. Why would Dr. Harrington do that? To make sure he could, because he saw us as chattel, and obsolete chattel at that. His creation to destroy at will. This recording makes me more suspicious of Ron than of Dr. Harrington and Joel. Speaking of which, where's the recording where he admits to the plot? Demetrius repeated Ron's claimed reason for not recording the second conversation, Dr. Harrington's advancing senses. Besides, Demetrius said, this recording was just a confirmation of my suspicions, ones you should have too. I mean, why were we left vulnerable to any poison? Why can we still be gunned down with the right weapons? Why didn't he make us as powerful as Joel? Joel was the result. I know what he said, Demetrius said dismissively. That Joel was a mistake. So why try to replicate that mistake when it came to himself? And where would his success have left us? I don't know. But I think working for Ron leaves us as mercenaries for a guy who killed 1,000 of us. Never mind, we'd have to break our new boss out of prison. Demetrius chuckled. No new boss. Ron will just make contacts and negotiate for us. He's here in the city. We can get him out within the hour, and he can take care of the legal ramifications once he's free. Ron knows a lot of people. He'll do some legwork I don't feel like doing. But, look, if you want to let him rot or kill him for what you think he's done or what he will do, it's fine by me. You're more important than he is. As far as getting paid goes, any money spent on us will be well worth it. We'll choose our missions, and the side we back will win faster and with a lower body count. No collateral damage. You think I'm the only one who can stop your going renegade? The only one who can convince the others not to join? But you started the party without me, haven't you? How many missions have there been already? Well, for one, Demetrius replied, I piloted the drone that killed Dr. Harrington. Greg was stunned. You murdered thousands, he said. So we can save thousands of times more, Demetrius replied. Dr. Harrington wasn't invincible.
Neither is Joel. We can forge our own path. Now, what else has happened?
You'll get all those details once you've agreed to join us. Now, what's your answer? No, Greg said firmly. I guess it's on to plan B then. Greg saw the bulge in Demetrius's pocket. His foot was quicker than Demetrius's hand. His kick tore the dart gun through the pant pocket and shattered it against the stone wall. Plan C it is, Demetrius said, simultaneously rocking Greg with a roundhouse kick that sent him flying through the plate glass window of a seafood restaurant 10 feet away. Demetrius turned and saw a hot dog vendor oblivious to the projectile just launched across the street. The vendor asked Demetrius, "You want a hot dog, boss?" as he approached. "Sure," he replied, even as he gripped the cart. "What do you want with that?" "The works." Demetrius whipped the 500-pound cart over the packed traffic as the hot dog vendor stood stunned, and the crowd let out a collective, "Whoa!" The cart clocked a just-rising Greg, sending his head through a hostess stand. In his exuberance, Demetrius did a running leap over the lanes of motorists, a move he instantly regretted. The cart shot out of the restaurant, pasting Demetrius in midair. The crowd let out a collective gasp as he rocketed back across the street. The gathering crowd made the battling CVs easy enough to find for Francesca, even if she hadn't had the tracking device. Francesca bumped a pasty, pudgy tourist who stood kvetching with his equally hefty wife about their glacial cab ride through the heavy traffic. Yells and glares followed her as she raced toward the combatants in her high heels and pantsuit. Demetrius barely glanced up as he held Greg from behind in a headlock while Francesca approached. Until he saw Francesca pull out a dart gun. He locked legs to prevent being thrown off and pushed down against Greg's struggling arms, simply yelling, "Shoot him!" Francesca raised the dart gun as Greg struggled even more fervently. She fired and struck Demetrius on the shoulder. "Be careful, damn it!" Demetrius barked. "You're lucky the darts don't work on..." And then he saw the look of pained ambivalence on Francesca's face. Francesca saw the look of terror mixed with rage on the face of Demetrius. She knew from past history that Demetrius was feeling a rush of extra power as well, but he nonetheless let go of Greg and fell to his knees. Arching back, he yelled, "Run!" as his skin took on a deathly pallor. "Brother," Greg exclaimed as he knelt next to Demetrius. "What did you do?" He shouted at Francesca. I had to, Francesca said mournfully. Greg turned back to Demetrius and placed his hand urgently on his shoulder, but Demetrius waved him off. "Film me," Demetrius yelled. "What?" A still stunned Francesca stammered. "Film me, now." Francesca pulled out her smartphone and recorded the dying man. His flesh was turning a swamp green, and pus-filled boils formed as he said, more quietly, "Boys and girls in cars, dogs and birds on lawns." He fell dead into Greg's arms. Sirens could be heard. A quick search on the same smartphone revealed the CV's last words had been randomly chosen words from a random song, a code to the other CVs that the video was not a fake and Ron's betrayal was all too real. Greg posted the video to the CV's internal Facebook page before the police arrived. A decent crowd had come out despite the drizzle outside the VA hospital. The president, flanked by the Secretary of Defense, had given a highly anticipated but disappointingly vague foreign policy speech, affirming her commitment to removing the CVs from their foreign theaters of operation now that Dr. Harrington was reported dead, but giving few details. Romwell had been texted a few minutes earlier. Ron had been arrested and would soon be on his way to the FBI in Washington via New York from Mexico. They had no idea who they were dealing with. It was a given that Ron would be a free man by the end of the day, the only question being whether to force the president to get the charges dropped or to break him out. Better to break him out, Romwell decided. There was no need to broadcast their control over the president at this point. She shook hands with the starstruck crowd as two fit young male agents guarded her, one on either side. They approached a group of rowdy teenagers horsing around with their umbrellas. The group finally shushed one another as the president reached out her hand, and then the two Secret Service agents were grasped instantly and firmly as both of their guns were removed surreptitiously. The group of 10 now rose to their full height, revealing they had been crouching and were actually young adults. The 6 in the rear pointed dart guns at the two agents in such a way the guns were unseen by the crowd.
"I assure you, those darts are the updated version,"
Greg said to the agent, and his partner as a look of quiet relief spread on the president's face.
"Let's move out of here quietly, and then I have a video you'll want to see before going to jail."
The two acceded. 2 of Greg's CVs came up from behind and slipped seamlessly into place of the captive agents. As the CVs, who had so recently threatened the president instead of guarding her, were led to the large cluster of paddy wagons and black and whites in the back of the hospital, Greg saw that Secretary Romwell and his CV guards were already being put inside. Francesca was led to her jail cell just a few blocks from Madison Square Garden, past a collection of hooting, babbling degenerates that stunk of BO and vomit. Turning the corner, she saw a glaring, visibly unrepentant Ron, isolated in his own cell wearing a rumpled suit. Both would be picked up by the FBI shortly.
"Murdering bitch!"
he yelled after her.
"Couldn't have done it without you,"
Francesca replied sardonically.
"Was that your way of growing a conscience, or did you just think it would get you off?"
The guard told him to shut up.
"'Cause don't worry, honey. I got plenty to keep you in jail till you rot. And I don't care if it gets me a single day's freedom, because I am just that much of a spiteful prick."
"Hey, you're about to get a muzzle, pal." It was only a few minutes later when Francesca saw another face, both familiar and unwelcome, approach. It was that of Joel Singer, though Ron had told her the man's real identity.
"Hello, Bob,"
Francesca said bitterly.
"I'm Joel,"
he replied evenly.
"What do you want?"
"The FBI and Chief Malone told me you've agreed to give your full cooperation. She's asked me to scan your memories with your permission."
"You can do that now?"
"Somewhat." He did not elaborate. Francesca nodded, well aware that saying no would probably harm her plea deal. He raised his hand, and Francesca felt a slight buzz for about a minute. His face was impassive as he lowered his hand and began to walk away. He had already taken a couple of steps when he turned back to Francesca and said,
"He was wrong."
"Who was wrong about what?" "Being altruistic has been shown to increase levels of beneficial hormones like endorphins and oxytocin, reduce stress hormones, decrease heart disease, and increase lifespans." He responded indirectly. "It's the farthest thing from masochism." He turned back and continued down the hallway.
"Joel?"
Francesca asked, her question unreturned. Tina drove through the woods of eastern Connecticut in her Ford Fusion sedan, her headlights cutting through a light fog. She had friends who had had company cars, some who had found themselves out of a job and a car simultaneously. She now found herself out one best friend. And should Dr. Harrington no longer feel the need to keep up appearances, she would also be out one job, one car, and soon one house. She had more to worry about than Dr. Harrington's whims, however. Deer often shot out in front of cars here. Funny how different places brought different dangers. Her eyes were wary for the rats with hooves, as they were called up here. But a distressing sound filled her ears instead. A popping sound from her right rear tire. She was unable to drive within a couple of minutes. She did not know how to change a tire. One of the liberties of growing up in the city. She looked down at her cell phone. No bars. She fumbled for the owner's manual, then stepped out of the car and into total blackness. She opened the trunk, flipping through the pages in the faint light. Tears came to her eyes as she started to pull clutter from the trunk. Her exasperation turned to relief and then elation, however, as headlights pulled behind her, and she saw the pulley of a tow truck. A grizzled, beefy white guy stepped out. "I was just on my way to my garage. Looks like you could use my help." Tina nodded, and she quickly found her car hooked up and herself getting a ride from the driver. "We got a guy working late back at the shop. He'll get you patched up," he said. You seem a little upset, he added a couple of minutes later, perhaps just to break the awkward silence.
Sometimes it's easier to tell a stranger, right? Tina replied. Hey, wait. This isn't a tow truck confession spin-off show, is it? Do I need to look for a hidden camera? The driver smiled politely. Well, if it looks like I just lost my best friend, it's because I did.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who was she?
He. I think you may have seen him on TV. Joel Singer.
What? You mean the guy who could change himself? I only saw him on the TV coverage. When he looked like...
I know. A monster. But a nice one.
Wow, he's dead? But I saw on the news...
That's a long story.
Okay then, so your best friend was a guy, huh?
You think that's unusual?
The driver shrugged. I think when a man and woman are friends, usually one or both of them want something more.
Tina sat in silence for a minute. Maybe so.
Maybe he wanted more, or maybe you wanted more.
I don't know. There were signs he wanted more. And Joel was an unusual guy.
Yes, I saw that.
Oh, yes, well, that way, of course. She had to chuckle at the obviousness of the statement. No, I mean in other ways, too. He was a stranger to the modern world in a lot of ways. Even as he made it more modern, he could be distant, odd.
Is that why a romance never happened?
No, I don't know. He was so great in so many ways. He made me laugh. Although I must admit I'm not sure how often it was intentional. Sometimes I think I just used his quirks as an excuse not to get closer, that I was scared to let myself love him. But that meant I loved him even more.
How so?
I mean, have you ever had a really great date with someone where you feel that rush, a day you don't want to end? Well, maybe that feeling isn't real unless it's tainted with fear. And that's also why you don't want that day to end, because you're afraid you'll never have a day like it again. Maybe you don't really love someone unless you're terrified they're not the person you think they are, unless you're afraid every moment you're being a fool.
The driver nodded. I think I know what you mean.
I mean, there was this one day. We were at the Botanical Gardens in the Bronx. We really had a great day. I think we held hands.
You did? I mean, you did? The driver asked, correcting himself.
I think. Anyway, it was a really nice day.
The Botanical Gardens, huh? I heard they're beautiful.
Yeah, I can't tell if Joel thought so. He was usually more into his science.
Well, in his defense, science can be beautiful too. I mean, I remember reading this article once about time travel, going into the past and changing events. One of the problems with it, one of the things the author said makes going into the past impossible, is that events aren't erasable. Events are, and once they are, they're there forever, indelibly stamped onto their little piece of space-time. So that happy day with your friend is still there, and will be forever, even if your friend did blow it at the end.
Blow it? No, it's not that. Listen to me, saying I think I might have loved a man while telling you all about his flaws. A man who just died at that. God, what do you think he would say about me if he saw me right now? She said, shaking her head.
There was an awkward silence, and then the driver cleared his throat. I think he'd say, "You gave me my humanity."
Tina turned at the comment to see the driver looking at her intently for a moment, then turning back to watch the road. They came to the garage a minute later, a dimly lit structure with a white cinder block exterior, surrounded more by trees than other businesses. The driver let her car down and walked back to the cab.
You go ahead and knock on the door. You'll get patched up okay.
With that, the man drove off into the foggy night. Tina stood there for a moment, feeling relieved and yet perplexed all at once.
She then walked to the door and knocked. There was no answer. She peered in through the window and saw there was no one inside. Feeling panicked, she ran back and yelled for the tow truck driver. But he was well out of earshot. Then she noticed her right rear tire was perfectly fine. Dr. Harrington sat in his Manhattan townhouse on a Wednesday evening, in the upstairs office. He had inherited the brownstone from himself, legally given it to Joel. Getting his company back was more complicated. The CEO role was inherited by Joel as well, but the government had invalidated that codicil. The doorbell rang. He walked down his marble staircase carefully, went to the door, and opening the metal cover, peered through the keyhole. Outside was a confused-looking young Asian man. "Who is it?" he asked in the voice and guise of Joel, not taking any chances. "I'm here for delivery." "Not here, you've made a mistake," he said over the loudspeaker, not answering the door. "You didn't order General Tao's chicken with pork fried rice?" "No, sorry." The young Asian man walked away looking bewildered. Dr. Harrington turned back to his foyer. Joel was standing there. "Hey, I was hungry," Joel said. "Can't I get Chinese food delivered to my own home?" he said disarmingly. "How?" Dr. Harrington replied breathlessly as he changed back to his true form. "Can we talk it over with whatever you have in your kitchen?" Dr. Harrington chuckled. "Sure. And I've got a lot of food in my kitchen. Don't forget, we're similar in a lot of ways now." They walked into the large, luxurious kitchen. Dr. Harrington put some leftover chicken parmesan into the large, professional-grade stainless steel oven. He then joined Joel on a stool on the granite-covered island in the middle of the kitchen. "It's so great to see you again," he said warmly. "I'm so glad my rash foolishness didn't get you killed after all. But I went over the calculations. That explosion was enough to kill you." "It was," Joel confirmed. "I got a little help from a worthless pest." With that, Joel opened his hand and out flew a large moth. Dr. Harrington caught it by the wing. "A giant silkworm moth helped save you?" Joel nodded. "That moth can put itself into a diapause so deep it's able to sustain a hibernation and its life indefinitely, even with its brain removed. A diapause that can end once the brain is put back in its body." Dr. Harrington understood immediately. "You turned your brain into pure energy and beamed it away, bouncing it off something that would reflect it back, something big. It was one of those afternoons where you could see the moon during the day?" Dr. Harrington got the implications. Joel would only have had time to bounce an ethereal form of his brain off the moon. If the explosion had still been too hot when his essence returned, or his body was atomized, Joel would have died. More importantly, Joel had to have had some warning. There was now no doubt Ron's subsequent attack would have succeeded. "I'm glad you made it, my friend. Now, come with me. There's something I want to show you." Joel was brought to a home theater, a room with 20 leather reclining chairs in rows in front of an 80-inch LED screen. He sat while Dr. Harrington pressed a button on a simple remote. An animation began. On the screen, faint pulses like heat lightning were rising from the top of what Joel recognized as the Mount of Olives, what was now the Al-Tur section of eastern Jerusalem. But there were no sounds, no bombs raining down. Instead, something shot up. Soaring into the sky was a row of streaks of light, rising a mile into the sky, multiplying as they rose, a rapid mitosis of light. The streaks then tilted downward simultaneously, while spreading outward toward the city as they continued to multiply. Joel now noticed there weren't missiles on the tips. They were angels. One of the ethereal projections was heading right for the screen, its seraphim wings pinned behind its back, its calm face beautiful. The angel struck a bearded man in black on the edge of a crowd. The impact did not kill him. It did not even knock him off his feet. "Right now," Dr. Harrington said, turning to Joel, "this man is feeling like he had never yet fully lived. Like his lungs had been cleared of pus he had never known was there. Like
He had just sloughed off a wetsuit soaked with cement. Euphoria will be filling him like he has never known. The simulation showed the man suddenly embracing and dancing with the others in the Jerusalem square who were similarly jubilant, now as an impromptu celebration began. Dr. Harrington turned off the screen. Those aren't regular, light constructs. They send signals to the pituitary glands of the targets to release large amounts of endorphins. If you would prefer, we could simply send out the signals that created the euphoria, that encourage worldwide camaraderie, to everyone on the planet. But I thought an initial round with the angels and such would provide a grounding, an anchor for the desired transformation. The project is almost complete. It just needs some tweaks. What about the long-term effects? The long-term effects are the whole point. Think of it. No mass hypnosis, no surrendering free will. This signal will simply make people feel even better when they do right, and worse when they do wrong. Joel started to speak, but Dr. Harrington interjected. Look, let's face it. We've spent a lot more time in caves than we have in modern society, and the cave days is where the bulk of our brain's programming originates. We'd be making people more natural for this time, not less, better and more beneficially adapted to a civilized world. Joel thought for a moment. No, he said firmly, I won't help you, and I'll block you if you try to do it yourself. Why? Dr. Harrington asked calmly. I want to leave people as they naturally are. As they are according to whom? As they are according to no one. That's the whole point. Visibly frustrated, Dr. Harrington asked, So, is that the only reason you came? To find out what I was up to next and frustrate my efforts? No. I'm here because there's a police cruiser outside waiting to take you to jail. Dr. Harrington stared coldly but maintained his composure. Only one. I don't know whether to be relieved or insulted. You know why there's only one, Joel replied. Dr. Harrington did. Joel produced a data card from his pocket. Here are the terms of your surrender. Certain concessions have been made. Concessions made before a trial, that's unusual. It's an unusual situation. Dr. Harrington had to laugh in agreement as he took the card. What if I refused? Dr. Harrington asked, with purposeful offhandedness. Then you and I are headed to the center of Antarctica, Joel replied, just as matter-of-factly. Dr. Harrington nodded in acknowledgement. And if I agree, do you really think there's a prison that could hold me? You tell me, Joel replied with a smirk. Dr. Harrington understood the real request was for him to admit he had contemplated a prison that could hold Joel. No static prison could hold either of us. First, we would have to be bombarded with powerful interference waves on the inside. Even so, the walls would not only need to be made of a polymer stronger than anything found in nature, but those walls would have to be reinforced automatically, with extra material at the first sign of trouble. It would be something akin to shooting liquid Teflon out of a series of water cannons that instantly bonded to an existing shell. Yes, I think something like that would be about right, Joel said. Accepting the offer doesn't preclude my right to a trial. I should hope not. I intend to testify on your behalf. Dr. Harrington smiled. Joel turned and began to walk out. I'll be outside, he said. Dr. Harrington nodded. Joel, he said as the young man turned back. Going to jail isn't what bothers me most, nor the mistakes I've made. It's that after all I've done, after all we've done, rather, all the statistics I could show on the lives we've saved, the crime we've reduced, the atrocities we've stopped, I'm still not sure we've made the world a better place, or a happier one. It's like every small victory reinforces how far we have to go. What should we do under such circumstances? Joel thought for a moment. Wake up tomorrow and do our best all over again, he said, then walked out the door. Dr. Harrington inserted the flashcard into his laptop, bringing up what the government was offering if he followed Joel out the door peacefully. The terms included no treason charges, no life sentence, which didn't necessarily preclude a sentence of 100 years or more. The primes convicted
based on his DNA trackers and other illicit means he provided, would be released. Research equipment could be installed in prison at his cost, and his daughter's would-be kidnapper would be prosecuted. Katie Manor would be the new interim CEO for the next 10 years, at which time Jessica would take the role. Dr. Harrington walked outside to a waiting police car, with Joel standing outside of it. "Has Jessica agreed to this?" Dr. Harrington asked. Joel nodded. "I know whom I'm making my phone call to then, and there were a couple of people I was hoping to say goodbye to first." Pulling into the country club, Joel was struck by the untold, manicured acres that were neither part of the golf course nor adjacent to any buildings. It was as though they were wasting resources in the upscale Georgia neighborhood just to show they could. Joel and his El Camino had traveled the old-fashioned way, allowing him to catch word that the CVs would now be answering only to themselves, with Greg as their titular head. They had agreed not to initiate any more missions without the approval of a commission chosen from among the world's democracies, but only after deciding a mission was worthy. The DNA trackers and stealthy surveillance devices would be introduced nationwide, but used only with a warrant. Joel made his way to the pro shop after parking, wearing a pair of cargo shorts and a light blue golf shirt he thought were appropriate enough. But then he had never golfed before, and didn't plan to today. He was nevertheless looked at askance as he entered. He approached the counter. "Can I help you, kid?" the older but fit golf pro asked. "Yes, I was looking for Walter Granger. I heard he was here." The pro looked down at the schedule. "Nope, he played this morning. I'm afraid you missed him." "No, I didn't," Joel said plainly. "Like I said, I heard he was here." The literal nature of Joel's comment and his identity were both evidently lost on the pro. Leaning closer to Joel, the pro intoned, "Look, kid, why don't you look around? You don't belong here, if you know what I mean." "Well, you have a point. I would have to rent some clubs if he has me join him," Joel said without irony. The pro chuckled. "I think you and your rented clubs would do better on a public course." "Oh, I see," Joel replied after a moment. He then turned instantly into a tall white man with salt and pepper hair, arrayed in the finest Nike golf clothes. The pro promptly fainted, as the small crowd in the store stood stunned. Joel took the opportunity to walk out to the course, first changing back to his unadulterated self. And there he was, Joel's grandfather. A trim man looking 10 years younger than his 72 years, with a full head of gray hair and a narrow, handsome face, more distinguished than worn by wrinkles. Joel already knew the face well, as Granger had risen to president of his ball-bearing company, and was now running for Congress. His ads had been easy enough to find on YouTube. The smiling face Joel had seen on the internet at campaign events was nowhere to be found as Joel walked up the hill to the 4th tee. Mr. Granger and his flummoxed partner made their displeasure at this interruption known well before his entrance to the tee box, and this upbraiding was preceded by unflattering, ostensibly covert comments as Joel approached. Joel's very uninvited presence was threatening, of course, even though he wore an ingratiating grin. So he was not surprised to see the men raising their clubs in a contortion, splitting the difference between using sporting equipment and a weapon. Joel stopped at a distance of about 10 feet, his mien still friendly. "You want to get the fuck out of the way, kid? You're trespassing," Granger barked. An inauspicious start to a family reunion, Joel thought. He remained silent as his grandfather lined up his driver. His partner looked at him disconcertingly, even as he kept an eye on the intruder. "Stand where you want, kid. I get a free drop if this ball cracks your skull." "Walter, don't!" his partner shouted. Granger swung. He hit the ball full force right at Joel's face. Joel caught the ball, as though he were catching a frisbee at the beach, squeezing his hand effortlessly. He unclenched his fist to let fine powder dribble down onto the grass. Simultaneously, the golfers winced in pain as they dropped their clubs, which now glowed with searing heat. "What do you want?" his grandfather growled, putting a veneer of bluster over evident terror. "I came to say something to you." "What?" In response, Joel moved with superhuman speed as his grandfather let out a stifled yelp. "Granddaddy!" he shouted joyously, as he picked up the old man within view of dozens and earshot of hundreds. Joel placed the stunned septuagenarian gently back on the ground and walked away. An article precipitating Walter Granger's exit from his campaign appeared in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution the next day, detailing the events surrounding the embrace of Granger by his illegitimate grandson. Just behind Queens Boulevard and Forest Hills, with its endless beige brick strip malls and plain brick apartment towers, lies a neighborhood right out of the wealthiest sections of Westchester, with houses of old gray stone, lacquered wood, and cultivated landscaping. The denizens of the multi-million-dollar houses were drawn from old New York money, CEOs, lawyers, and surgeons mostly. One of the houses had been owned, unfortunately in the view of the neighbors, by Bruce Titus, former head of the Knights. The home of the recently incarcerated Mr. Titus had been passed to the Knights Front Corporation, active in the music management and strip bar business. The Knights had thrown a party for the returning primes to honor their predecessors. The party was complete with catered barbecue, professional DJ, and a $sign-shaped pool. The cuisine and music had been complemented with lots of cocaine, which is why the party had ended poorly. The packed soiree had ended with the arrest of over 50 primes. Suede Bullet's leader, Gary, happened to be in the neighborhood when over 20 police cars and 2 paddy wagons arrived. He was waving goodbye to a group of enraged primes who were spewing threats at him in return. Others were doing curbside litigation, arguing the raid was an obvious case of entrapment. They were being told to save it for the judge when Gary saw Greg out of the corner of his eye. He walked over and offered his hand, which Greg refused again. "We got a lot of them today," Gary said. "Not all of them, though." "We'll get them," Greg replied tersely. "Did you tip off the police, or did someone give you a tip? Maybe someone from Gnotech?" Greg asked. "Interesting question," Gary said. "Are we sharing information now?" An eye roll from Greg was the only answer. "That's what I thought. Hey, I couldn't help but notice that Malik, the Knight's new leader, didn't show up for the party," Gary said. "I imagine knowing not to show up at parties like this is how he became the new leader," Greg said. "Maybe. Or do you think he's not too keen on splitting the spoils with the old guard anyway? What I think is we should get all the drug dealers and criminals off the street. Don't you think?" Greg replied with a hard stare. Gary smiled in response. "That's the spirit," he replied with a gentle slap on the shoulder. "You just let me know how I can help you with that," he said as he went back to his car, still smiling. General Mezclan paced nervously in front of his large ebony desk, staring at a wall decorated with collars from various suitors, foreign and domestic, traditional Bolivian art mixed with French Impressionism and Russian frescoes, a cornucopia of ulterior motives. Bolivia was a chaotic country now, one whose neighbors didn't let national borders get in the way of plundering. Still, chaos could bring opportunity sliding along a knife's edge of danger. That's why he kept looking outside, waiting for confirmation that his most intransigent and immediate enemy was dead. Mezclan had sent over 300 well-armed men in jeeps, trucks, tanks, and helicopters, an absolute case of overkill for the camp of 20 or so men Carrie had at her ramshackle headquarters. "Are you quite certain the CVs have abandoned our enemies?" Mezclan asked Colonel Manfi, his trusted advisor. Manfi spoke bluntly, a quality which usually meant a short lifespan in his line of work, but demanding obsequiousness from staff in this part of the world was a vanity that would bring death even sooner. "Yes, the interlopers always leave eventually. Even faster when the visit was the hopeless pet project of a quixotic madman now imprisoned," Manfi added. "Nevertheless, the Russians will betray you the moment it suits them." "Of that," Mezclan said without equivocation, "I have no doubt." He was not being flip. The Chinese were already lined up to support him in return for mountains of lithium under such circumstances. "Just for shits and giggles," he said to Manfi, using an expression he had picked up while studying in the U.S. "Make sure the CV detector is working." The device had been given to him by Ron Guerin and was now mounted on the outside wall of his headquarters, along with a hefty supply of updated darts, with the new poison and their matching guns. Manfi returned a couple of minutes later. The news was bad.
"The detector is broken, sir."
"Well, fix it then," Mesclam replied gruffly.
"That will be difficult, General. The dish has been struck by lightning."
"You're mistaken." The dish had been fine the last time he checked, and there had been no lightning storm since.
"The lightning came from the side,"
Manfi said. Mesclam froze.
"Is Dr. Harrington not in prison?" "He is. Quite securely, our sources tell us."
Mesclam's eyes opened even wider. "We have to leave, now." Manfi understood Mesclam meant exactly what he said, as did the half-dozen men within earshot. Mesclam had made arrangements for this type of perturbation. Cash, safe houses, and a plane at an unmarked landing strip were ready to go. Grabbing only the guns already in reach, they walked out to their waiting jeeps. Only they weren't waiting for them.
"Why don't you try looking up?"
a painfully familiar voice said. Mesclam reflexively complied to see their 5 jeeps hanging, suspended, 20 feet and more, held by a network of thick ropes entwined around the requisite trees. He looked down to see Carrie standing beside the tree that moments before had hidden her. Mesclam didn't raise his arms to shoot her. If she was standing there openly, it meant... And there they were, scattered amongst the trees, but all within 100 yards. 10 CVs, with their sights lined up on him. Any thought of using the dart guns on the wary group dissipated. Mesclam had heard about the new Council of the World's Democracies, with which the CVs were working, and there was plenty of evidence to override his diplomatic status. There would be no pleasantly laconic life in exile spent lounging by the pool for him. A lifetime finished in a stark prison was what he was facing. He had other ideas. He raised the pistol to his head. It was shot out of his hand. Mesclam turned to Carrie.
"You really are a pain in the ass,"
he said, as the CVs approached holding handcuffs. Dr. Harrington finished his goodbyes to his daughter. Leaving her apartment, he requested the pair of police officers bring him to a specific jail for processing until the FBI came, one where a pair of former colleagues were. He was cooperating with the officers and didn't want to make unreasonable demands, but everyone understood they didn't have much choice. A half hour later, Dr. Harrington was led into the holding area where Ron's cell was. He found Ron laying on his cot. He sat up immediately and noted the handcuffs Dr. Harrington now wore.
"So, the gang's all here."
"Yes, the police graciously allowed me one last chat with you, and then I'm headed to prison, where both of us belong."
"Spare me the self-flagellation, Bob. I remember the stipulations we discussed if it ever came to this. Your own lab in prison, no life sentence, and this for a man who will never be harmed in prison, won't age, and can turn off his sense of boredom."
"It is more than I deserve. I'll grant you that. How about you? Any apologies for the thousands of deaths you've caused?"
"Apologies are for the little people. That being said, I admit to nothing."
"Oh, Bob, why couldn't you have just died?
Or at least gotten the hell out of my way. The world would have been better for it. And now who's running Gnotech? That idiot Katie Manor?" Ron asked, correctly naming the former CFO. "And worse, who's running the CVs?"
"Their choices are their own now, though their missions are being chosen by a Council of the World's
Oh, please. A Council of the World's Democracies? Do you want to know who is going to bribe whom on that council within a week? I'll give you that one for free." There was an awkward silence as both men stared each other down, finally broken by Ron. "Hey, wait a minute. Who convinced you to turn yourself in anyway? I didn't see a man down in Mexico with any intention of putting himself in handcuffs. With Joel dead, no one could threaten you. Jessica? No. No daughter wants to see her old man in prison as much as he might deserve it. Francesca is 2 cells away, and Malone let you go down there. Have I said the right name already, or is it someone else?" Dr. Harrington stood stone-faced. Or so he thought. "So the kid is alive. Damn. And my nerds told me it was physically impossible he survived." Ron grew more serious. "Bob, forget Gnotech. Forget the initiates. Forget you and me. Joel is the greatest prize of them all. And I know the sharks are circling now, maneuvering as we speak to get him under their control. But I can stop them. I know those handcuffs can't hold you. Get out of them, turn these bars to glass, and let's go help that kid."
Dr. Harrington smirked. "Ron, your cynicism has made you more myopic than the most naive child. I should know. My own brand of cynicism poisoned my thinking for years on end, long enough to land me in these handcuffs. I'm not going to break out of them, and I'm not breaking you out of that cell. Enjoy the prison food." Francesca looked up when she heard the man being led into her block, expecting to begin her FBI transfer. Instead, it was Bob, wearing a blue dress shirt but also handcuffs. A wave of mixed emotions came over her. Joy at seeing him still alive, guilt at her betrayal, simmering anger still at this man not giving her what Ron had promised instead.
"Bob, you're alive,"
she nonetheless said joyfully, and went to hug him as best as one can hug a man in handcuffs through metal bars. He gladly accepted the embrace to her relief.
"It looks like we're not going on any dates anytime soon, though. Are we?"
Bob shook his head.
"I'm so sorry. For everything," she said.
Bob nodded. "At least you did the right thing in the end."
"So Demetrius was a good murder then, to go along with the bad murders of my dad and Marquez, and to think I became an advocate to save lives."
"Well, one of the folks you named is still alive." The process of elimination was easy enough.
"I'm glad Yvonne survived. No thanks to me."
"And Demetrius didn't, and that's my fault. I failed that young man, and you had to clean up my mess." They both sat silent for a moment, but there was something she felt compelled to ask.
"Would you have supported Lauren any way she wanted, if you were on this mission with her?"
Francesca asked.
"Before she went to a man like Ron?"
Francesca felt a knot in her stomach as she waited for the angry response. But it didn't come. "I don't know," he replied gently. "What is it they say? Love is a kind of madness. I know I was mad, but what drove me to it? My love for you, my love for Lauren, my love for science, my love for accomplishments. They all drove me a little crazy, made me do things I shouldn't have done. The world will be better with Joel out there instead."
"Joel's alive?"
"Oh yes," he replied. "I buried the lead there, didn't I? He's alive, and he'll have help I didn't have, or advice I didn't want to listen to, in any case. From Katie, Jessica, Greg, decent leaders like General Marquez and President Horner. He's the one who convinced me to turn myself in. See, like I said, you did the right thing in the end, and you weren't threatened by the most powerful person in the world first."
"Isn't it still too much power? In the hands of one person, the things he can do?"
"Yes. If I'm ever let out of prison early, I already know who I'm supposed to stop." Joel knelt down by the tombstone, moved now after 10 years in a pauper's grave in Brownsville, Brooklyn. A minute before he had been standing, staring down at the Hudson River in this graveyard within a waterfront section of Riverdale, one that only morbid fear had prevented from becoming another high-rise co-op like the ones which surrounded him. The air was crisp this fading summer morning as he looked at the marker. It had just his grandmother's name, Aretha Richardson, and the timeline of her life. Joel had decided to keep it that way, regardless of his dad's stories of her kindness and bravery. He hadn't known the woman, and couldn't vouch for what message she would have wanted. He hoped his act of appreciation was message enough. "I'm sorry you had to make it here this way, Grandmom. I hope you're at peace now. I'm not going to give up on Dad if that helps. I just wanted you to know you're not forgotten."
"No, she isn't,"
Joel heard a young woman say behind him. He turned and saw Tina. He couldn't help but smile despite his shock. Behind her were Stan, Larry, and 10 others, a mixture of staff and former residents of the Reform Center.
"You made a pretty big splash over in Brooklyn a couple of years ago,"
Tina said, referring to his ultimately disappointing visit to see his father.
big enough that the name Aretha Richardson rang a bell with a couple of former residents who saw the name in the paper.
Joel had posted notice of the funeral in the paper as a formality. He had expected to be the only attendee, save the hired reverend who had given a necessarily generic sermon. Joel rose and gave Tina a warm, unfettered embrace. Glancing over her shoulder, Larry must have seen the quizzical look on Joel's face.
"I report on Friday,"
he said, referring to the 5-year prison sentence for kidnapping he was about to begin. His eyes were a mixture of remorse and resignation, both for doing what he felt he had to do and for what he now faced. Joel greeted and thanked them all individually, then led them out. Tina slipped her hand into his. Joel gave it a squeeze and smiled slightly as he pulled Tina to the side and let the others pass. "I'm going away for a little while," he said to her.
"Where?"
"I've been called," Joel replied. "There are some folks who want to meet with me, make sure I'm using my abilities responsibly."
"But where? Wait, do you mean—"
Joel nodded.
"Have they been watching you?"
"They've been watching all of us for a long time."
"Have they been here?"
"Many times."
"How are you going to get to this other place?"
she said, unable to bring herself to say planet. "I've been given directions," Joel replied with a sly smile. He didn't mention the journey would take only moments regardless of the distance.
"And then you'll be returning to that quiet little cabin in the woods?"
Joel nodded. "Being demoted from CEO has its privileges," he joked.
"Not to mention being officially listed as missing and presumed dead,"
Tina replied. "That doesn't hurt either," Joel said, though both knew his renewed anonymity would be temporary.
"So when will you be back?"
"I won't be gone long. Space-time is a little more malleable for me these days."
"How—"
There was an outward burst of light, and Tina found herself with an unobstructed view of the Hudson. Jessica Harrington had 2 pieces of interesting mail waiting for her in her expansive office as she began her first day as VP of Product Development for Gnotech. An envelope and a cardboard box 1 foot in dimension all around. Both were conspicuously missing return addresses. As is the wont of children and adults alike, she opened the box first. Her excitement grew as the box opened with the sound of her voice. She saw a smaller box inside, one made of industrial-grade diamond. The diagrams, formulas, and samples in the smaller box, again opening at the sound of her voice, related to a cancer drug. This medication took on metastasizing tumors, even those that grew at a normal pace. It addressed the dilemma of cancer cells ignoring the signal to stop replicating by turning that horrible trait on its head. The medication was actually a drug cocktail. The first drug simply caused mild inflammation in all but cancer cells, which ignored this signal as well. The second component induced a massive autoimmune response, sending the body's leukocytes on the attack against all the body's cells through phagocytosis, eating the cells rather than signaling them except those producing histamine, a product of inflammation. The cancer cells wrote their death warrant by ignoring the initial component of the drug. A mysterious note was tucked inside the box. It read, "Developed with the help of a bright little girl, who helped me realize nothing was the key." Blown away by the contents of the first package, her curiosity made her open the letter next. It was also from a familiar source, albeit not the same one as the box. "Dear Jessica," it began. "First, let me congratulate you on your promotion and the wise decision of Gnotech to groom you as the new CEO." Jessica had to admit that Joel's return provided more assurance that the plan would stay on track. "I have no doubt you will be an exemplary leader, and I am writing to you to offer my assistance. Unfortunately, as you are aware, I am currently serving a well-deserved life sentence, spared from the gas chamber thanks only to the valuable information I have provided to help offset my many crimes. I was of great service to your father as his head counsel as he will gracefully attest, before my betrayal of him. I am hopeful that you could intercede on my behalf with the government to have me transferred to the Singer Reform Center. I am aware that it is the policy of the center not to reduce sentences, but as I will only be able to help fully if I am free to be at your service. Jessica shook her head and balled up the paper. A couple of minutes later, Hector answered Jessica's call to come by and look at the package. A drug sent in by an unnamed source. What do you make of that? He said with a smile. We're going to make a cure out of it, Hector, Jessica said politely but firmly, handing him the box. Fair enough, he said. Jessica left to take a car uptown for the opening of the Lauren Harrington Community Center. As the driver meandered through the dense Manhattan traffic, Jessica reflected on the reported burst of light that had been seen that morning and the odd message from Tina that Joel was going away for a little while. She had an educated guess as to the nature of the light burst. Instant teleportation was impossible, but that burst gave Jessica a clue as to what might have happened. If Joel had been beaming an aspect of himself out into space at the quantum level, he might have moved that beam over to a wormhole, as directed by those who had invited him. He could have moved that stream to the wormhole faster than the speed of light, as one could if they had a flashlight that sent a stream of light to the moon, and moved it quickly back and forth. The effect was created naturally at times, as quickly spinning stars sent rays streaking across planets, creating a burst of light called a photonic boom, which is what the light flare seen in the city may have been. The limo arrived in the South Bronx. The community center was a beautiful piece of architecture, wrapped in glass and taking up a city block with its 8 stories. And yet not a square inch was wasted. The center had top-notch basketball and tennis courts, 2 of each, paired with an exhaustively curated research library, a computer lab with dozens of state-of-the-art computers, several meeting rooms, and a 500-seat auditorium. Her mother would have been proud. There would be 20 security guards and frequent police patrols, and informally even the Suede Bullets and Knights had agreed to discourage troublemakers who might ruin the opportunity the community center provided. As she looked out on Jerome Avenue, Jessica saw an old woman with Parkinson's disease shuffling along. 3 rambling schizophrenic men standing on street corners raging against phantom oppressors. And a young man looking around furtively as he reached into the driver's side window of an old Acura that had pulled up to the curb to make a transaction. Just then, Jessica's phone rang. It was Hector. Hey, was there anything more to that package? He asked. This drug sounds incredible, but I wouldn't mind a little more information. That was it. There's a lot of work left to be done then, he said. Yes, she replied, looking back down the street. There is. The end. We hope you've enjoyed this audio performance of The Awakening of Joel Singer, written by Scott McCaffrey, read for you by Luke Welland. Audio copyright 2024, Scott McCaffrey, all rights reserved.
Psychic vision, but when things fall into place, superposition. In any universe, you are my dark star. I won't you to want me? Why don't we rely on chemistry? Why don't we collide the spaces that divide us? I want you to want me. La-di-da-da-di-da, la-di-da-da-di-da, la-di-da-da-di-da. Superstition aims with imprecision. But when things can't be explained, superposition. Oh, in any universe, you are my dark star. I want you to want me. Why don't we rely on chemistry? Why don't we collide the spaces that divide us? I want you to want me. La-di-da-da-di-da, la-di-da-da-di-da. I want you to want me. No matter what we do, I'll be there with you. I want you to want me. Why don't we rely on chemistry? Why don't we collide the spaces that divide us? I want you to want me. La-di-da-da-di-da, 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 la-di-da-da-di-da. swings to clouds. Make your own lake, let it flow. Throw seeds to sprout. Make your own